Hey, you there. Just want to say thanks very much for watching.
But if you want more of this stuff, why don't you go to Kermode and Mayo's Take, the podcast, get it wherever you get your podcast, because there's like hours of this stuff and it's all fab.
Get it from the podcast shop, just round the corner.
No, you get it on your phone.
I'm delighted to say I've been joined by its director, Alice Troughton, who's in the studio. Hello, Alice. How are you?
Hello, lovely to be here.
I'm sorry you've had to take your Manchester City logo water off the table.
It saves you, though, doesn't it, having to look at, the top team in the Premier League's logo all the time.
There you go. That's not actually the reason. I think it was because the only logos allowed
Your logo.
are show logos. Anyway, we've gone all corporate all of a sudden.
You have.
Well, congratulations on The Lesson. It's your debut. It's your first movie as a director. I just want to make a point that no one else in all the rounds of interviews that you're going to do, I would just like to say how fantastic it was to see Crispin Letts in a movie.
Oh.
Crispin Letts, who plays sort of, does he have a name? I mean, he's the butler in this.
Ellis is his name, but one name.
He was my son's drama teacher.
Oh.
And was responsible for him loving Shakespeare and loving English. And the first time I saw him in a movie, and then he left, obviously, to be full-time acting, and then he turned up in a Ken Branagh movie, and that was the first thing I wanted to say to Ken Branagh was Crispin Letts
is in your film.
Never mind all the...
That wasn't Death on the Nile, was it? Because he had a small part in Death on the Nile. He's done a couple.
Yes.
So.
Your movie starts with Darren McCormack's character, who will explain who he is in a moment. He plays a character called Liam. And we see him being interviewed on stage, maybe for a TV show, maybe for a podcast. It doesn't really matter. And there's an audience. And he is asked, I think this is right, what drew you to tell this story?
The classic.
That's right. So that's where we're going to start.
Yeah.
So what drew you to tell this story?
I really like, now, there will be podcasts upon podcasts debating on whether this fits as a noir or not, because I've listened to some of those podcasts and there's a lot of debate about whether noir is a movement or whether it's a genre or whether it isn't any of those things, because it was sort of invented after the films were made. So, but we kind of were looking at it as a noirish, let's say.
How would you recognise a noir-ish?
It's a thriller, and there's a moral malaise in the society, I think, that underlines it. I'm going to get myself into trouble discussing what noir is, but certainly the femme fatale element was there in our female character and the monster and the hero and the narrator and the kind of unwilling narrator. And we've sort of played with those roles. We've played with those archetypes. We show a film which is called The Blonde Sinner, I think, in America, which is a Diane Dawes noir in the actual film itself, and it's referenced. And it is what Gilly Delpy, and I'm going to speak for my actors because obviously my actors are on strike. God bless them.
Yes, they are.
And they've given me permission to tell you what they would say about it. Gilly Delpy's role in this is a sort of maman fatale rather than a femme fatale. And she talked about that quite a lot. So we have our archetypes within there, and we have the setting of an ease, and we have a journey, but there's a sort of redemption, I hope, at the end of this film.
Okay, so that's a kind of a broad wash. And what is the story that you're telling?
So I'm telling a story of a young man who is disenfranchised and sort of directionless, who wants to be a writer and has stopped writing, who goes to the house of this famous, very famous novelist who also happens to be his hero. And
played by Richard E. Grant.
Played by Richard E. Grant. And it is a story, there's a film called Sleuth, that's been redone a couple of times. It's a kind of classic story of master-pupil and how that relationship can turn and go toxic with the third element of a very unhappy household and a secret in the household.
This is your debut, as I mentioned right at the very beginning, and you've come from television.
I have. I spent 20 years and hundreds of hours. And Simon, what nobody tells you is that it's quite easy making movies in comparison.
In what way?
Nobody tells you that. Well, I have a wonderful DP on this film called Anna Patrokina, and we really enjoy working together. And it was like 22 days. It was a very short shoot. It was a very blessed shoot. And we had the creative time to play and enjoy it. And that's, you do get that on other shows and television shoots, but you're also dealing with something like, 20, 25 hours of television that you've got to produce. So just having an hour and a half and a small craft and a little joy, we were sort of like, this is actually really fun and easier.
Celine Song was on the show a couple of weeks back.
Oh, wonderful.
Talking about past lives, and it was quite clear, and that was her debut, and she, as I think you heard in the interview, she had appeared from being a playwright. So she had arrived from one sort of side of the industry and fallen in love with film. Was she speaking for you there as well?
Oh, definitely. And also, I think there's a wonderful thing happening, which is all the kind of groundwork investment in making sure that we get gender parity in directing. And obviously, we're so far away from that still. But it is coming to the fore. If you look at the lineup at the LFF this year, if you look at who's won at Cannes, I could name check, but there's too many to say. There are some brilliant female-led films coming to the fore. I mean, Celine Song will win all the awards she deserves to. It's an amazing film. And that's beautiful to see that coming up, but we were still quite a long way for having a body of work of films. And what I think when I speak to other filmmakers, we want to have a body of work. We don't want to just be judged on one film. We want to have the kind of 3 or 4 films so people can kind of see what your style is, because otherwise you're not going to get an adjective. I'm not going to get Troughton-esque anytime soon unless I make 2 or 3 films.
Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. While you're here, check out all the other videos because they're cool too, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to date with everything Kermode and Mayo's Take, then check out our social channels.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I would. I have done.
Excellent.